Clerk, PH1.
PH1 is a revocation hearing scheduled this day pursuant to state law to revoke a conditional use permit previously granted to Origami Asian Bistro on July 13, 2021 by ordinance number 48430, authorizing the operation of a nightclub on property located at 5957 East Virginia Beach Boulevard, Suite 18. And this was passed at your November 16th meeting, sir.
Thank you. This public hearing is to determine whether a conditional use permit should be revoked. Pursuant to ordinance number 38746, the procedure for this hearing will be as follows. The city attorney will present oral argument why the conditional use permit should be terminated. The entire presentation shall last no longer than 15 minutes. The holder of the conditional use permit will present an oral argument on their case, which shall last no longer than 20 minutes. Then the city attorney shall have 5 minutes for a rebuttal. No oral testimony shall be taken. Following the rebuttal and any discussion or questions by council members, a vote will be taken as to whether the conditional use permit shall be revoked. Mr. Fishko?
Ms. Taylor is going to brief you on the motion.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. City Manager. Tonight's presentation at the request of the City Manager's office is for council to consider the revocation of the conditional use permit granted to a business operating as the Origami Asian Bistro or Origami nightclub. I believe it also has a restaurant operating as the Bamboo Room at the same location. So to begin, first looking at the standards for council to consider under the zoning ordinance and granting a conditional use permit. It's that the applicant demonstrates that the proposed conditional use is appropriate for the location, compatible with the general character of the surrounding land, avoids significant adverse parking and loading and nighttime activity, will not substantially diminish or impair the value of the land within the neighborhood it's located, complies with all city, state, and federal laws, and will not cause a negative cumulative effect on the neighborhood and city as a whole. And those are the ones I've highlighted out of section 2.4.8C of our zoning ordinance. A business owner of such a nightclub as Origami in this situation is responsible for creating an attractive nuisance in that location by conducting a business that does attract bad actors, and bad acts are occurring in that location, but for that business operating at the Military Crossing Shopping Center location. Council can take and consider all information about the character and behavior of the owner of the business, the operators of the business, the holder of that conditional use permit. And this is a situation where we're here for this exceptional action, which is a conditional use permit revocation. And we're brought here today going back to a long history of the city giving chances to Origami and attempting to work with Origami. As you read in the statement of revocation, it first opened under an owner, Adrian Zhang. He's now listed as a manager. In 2014 as the 360 Sports Bar. It began operating as a nightclub in February of 2015. Immediately there were complaints from neighboring businesses and neighboring residents. There were 9 meetings or attempted meetings to address those issues with Origami from 2016 to 2017. The violations continued, such as fire code violations. It led to 8 court appearances in order to resolve those fire code safety issues. In 2017, there was a change in ownership and managers. So a new cup was applied for, and the name was changed at that point to Origami. That conditional use permit was granted with a sunset clause that it would expire in 2 years. The new owner, Wen Wu, and managers were put on notice that if there were continued complaints and violations of the CUP, the next CUP would not be approved. That was granted in 2017 and it expired in 2019. In the first half of 2020, the location was quiet, as many businesses were, and complaints began again in July. During this time, the business was operating without a conditional use permit or a business license and did not seek to operate legally or pay its taxes to the city until it was notified by the city. So during that time period, on June 30th of 2020, Chesapeake Police advised Norfolk narcotics investigators that a large shipping crate to be delivered to Origami had a positive alert from one of their drug dogs. The investigators in Norfolk received a search warrant. They conducted a controlled delivery where they made that delivery to Origami of the contents of that shipping crate. It was accepted at Origami on July 1st of 2020. Norfolk police intercepted 100 pounds of marijuana, 2 pounds of marijuana, and a firearm were also recovered from the vehicle of a manager listed on the conditional use permit after an alert from a drug dog. That manager is Cedric Hill. Several arrests were then made. Cedric Hill, the manager, was charged with felonies for possession with intent to distribute marijuana over 5 pounds, transportation of 1 or more ounces of cocaine into Virginia, possession of a firearm with drugs, and conspiracy to distribute marijuana, along with 2 co-defendants, one of which was noted as being an employee of Origami. Mr. Hill is represented in those charges by Delegate Don Scott. That matter is now pending for January 3rd of next year, 2022, in Norfolk General District Court for preliminary hearing. Again, I want to reiterate that these are charges, not convictions at this point. The city did receive information from Norfolk narcotics investigators that Cedric Hill had offered someone else $50,000 to claim those charges and take the fall for those charges. After those July 1st arrests, on September 6th of 2020, there was a call to Norfolk police for a person with a weapon and shooting outside of Origami, a report that there were multiple people with guns. On October 14th of 2020, a call regarding underage drinking. On October 18th of 2020, there was gunplay outside of Origami undeterred by the presence of police and return gunfire from Origami security. A report on November 1st of 2020 of shots fired from a vehicle. On November 2nd of 2020, the fire marshal rescinded the assembly permit for Origami due to overcrowding and failure to keep count. Due to that, the city met with the owner, Wen Wu, and the managers, Cedric Hill, Adrian Zhang, Akel Bookhart, in order to come up with a better plan and address those issues. The owner, Wu Wen Kin, attended, but she did not understand English. I'm not sure if she is present here tonight. She is the owner of the business and is the conditional use permit holder. On November 8th, right after the meeting, there was a report of a disorderly person with a gun at the business. On November 24th of 2020, a large service panel was installed at Origami with no electrical permit, despite several notices to the owner, and no permit was ever submitted. On December 5th of 2020, there was a report of a disorderly disturbance. The Norfolk Police Department was requested to help clear the lot at 10:16 p.m., which was the closing time due to the pandemic. On January 1st of 2021, Norfolk Police assistance was again needed to clear the parking lot at 10:51 p.m. On February 25th of 2021, there was a Planning Commission public hearing. The conditional use permit holder did not appear. The recommendation was denial. There was the conditional use permit renewal was brought before you all on April 13th of 2021. However, the owner of the business or anyone representing Origami was not present. They did, after that incident, engage counsel, Delegate Don Scott, and it was placed on the docket for July 13th of 2021, at which time counsel did approve a new conditional use permit with a sunset clause for 18 months, with the understanding that if there were any more incidents, then the council would have the option of revoking that conditional use permit. That is why we are here today with that exceptional action. So after it was placed back on the docket, after Origami was able to pay its taxes owed to the city right before that to get into the docket. It was approximately $37,000 that was paid in full on July 12th of 2021. Delegate Scott did acknowledge in that hearing that Norfolk police resources are needed in order to keep the peace at Origami. In reference to the July 17th, 2021 shooting, he stated in an email that security did its job and that it would have been better with off-duty police if they were allowed to work the parking lot at Origami's expense. And he argued at that July 13th hearing that there were no issues at Origami until July of 2020 when police stopped doing off-duty services. So in that sense, we're to understand that if granted a conditional use permit, in order to keep the peace at Origami, the Norfolk Police Department would need to take what time off of work they have and work for Origami as additional security. So the promise of July 13th, 2021 to council was that the business was going to focus more on the restaurant aspect instead of the nightclub. There were promises made to Lake Taylor Civic League and council that there would be no more issues, that Delegate Scott was working diligently to assist the owners and managers of the business with finding a mentorship and guidance in order to solve these issues. Again, that's why we're here today on this exceptional action. So instead, after those promises, 4 days later, on July 17th of 2021, Norfolk Police Department responded at 2:49 a.m. after closing to a call from Origami Security that security had an altercation with a man who shot at security and left in a vehicle dragging a security guard with his car. When officers arrived, they were stonewalled by security, who just pointed out one of the other security officers. He advised that he was trying to disarm a patron of Origami who had a firearm, that he went into that patron's vehicle and was dragged as that patron left. He advised he did not want to make a report, was not cooperative with officers. The officers did observe his injuries consistent with that and called a paramedic to assist him and treat him. 15 minutes later, Norfolk police received a call from Centera Lee Hospital reporting a man with a non-threatening gunshot wound to his abdomen. Detectives responded, and that gunshot victim reported he had been shot at Origami, that he had gotten into an altercation with security about where he parked his car and for not moving it fast enough. He stated that multiple security guards from Origami jumped on his car so that he grabbed his firearm that was on his passenger seat, chambered around, and drove off. At that time, he said the one guard did have a hand on his steering wheel and that he might have dragged him. When he realized he was shot, he was on Virginia Beach Boulevard and went to Centera Lee. He denied to the detectives ever shooting his firearm and gave them permission to search his vehicle. They recovered a firearm there with a full magazine and all rounds accounted for and no shell casings in the vehicle. Detectives attempted to investigate and made contact with anyone at Origami. They called and went in person but did not get a response. The victim then later advised the detective he was not sure if he would want to prosecute. They did not have a suspect identified at that time, but he believed it was security that may have shot him. After not cooperating with the police on scene, one of those security guards, Adrian Barrera, went to the magistrate and took out a summons against the gunshot victim, Charleston Grant. You saw his video earlier regarding the incident in closed session. These summonses allege misdemeanor brandishing and assault and battery and are being prosecuted by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. This morning it was set for a trial in Norfolk General District Court. The victim and his witnesses, who were other security guards at Origami, were not present in court, but Mr. Grant was with his attorney. The Commonwealth moved to continue the case, advising that Norfolk Police Department was seeking a direct indictment from the Commonwealth of felonies against the security officer, including firing at an occupied vehicle. I spoke with the Department of Criminal Justice Services investigator Brian Carver today. DCJS licenses these security guard companies. He advised that they review credentials and registration of their special conservators of the peace or security guards after these incidents. He advised they don't make a determination as to whether it was correct for them to have shot or not, whether it was a good shot or a bad shot. But he advised that the credentials and registration, there was no issue there for security, but he advised that he doesn't make a determination about that issue involving the shooting. On October 31st of 2021, Norfolk police were called to assist Origami with crowd control at 1:52 a.m. and 2:16 a.m. There were reports that 3 vehicles had been shot outside of Origami. One owner was identified when they came outside of the club, outside of Origami, but no one would cooperate or make a report. Given, again, the standards that I discussed at the beginning of the presentation about the negative cumulative effect and a business being an attractive nuisance, the city's position through this presentation is that the review of those standards, given what has gone on at Origami since these chances have been given in the past, and most particularly since the most recent cut warrant revocation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, welcome.
Dr. Alexander, council people, thank you for having me. Before I begin, I just wanted to bring up one housekeeping matter. Councilman, the Decker Law Firm, Councilman Thomas's firm had represented Origamis at one time, and I don't know if you wanted to, I have I guess it just came to my attention yesterday that you guys have represented him, so I don't know if you wanted to recuse yourself in this matter. It seemed that you may have a conflict since your firm did represent the owner of Origamis at one point. I wasn't sure if you were aware of that or not. They came to my attention yesterday. So I would respectfully request that at least you recuse yourself in the vote if it comes down to that. Second, I just want to begin to start with this. A lot of things, unfortunately, a lot of things that the city attorney brought up are things that the council had already known about and considered in the package when you voted in July of this year when I was here. So the cumulative effect of all of that sounds like it's a whole lot. There's something new that had happened. But it sounds like at best there have been 2 incidents that happened since that time. We were here July 13th for the revocation hearing, and at that time council granted them an 18-month extension to continue work, which they relied upon by then entering into contracts, purchasing new equipment, booking new dates, taking deposits, and doing what businesses do to be able to operate in the city with the certainty that they should have to continue to operate in the city. The other issues that the city attorney raised dealing with Mr. Cedric Hill, those issues were known at the time. Those charges were from July 2020. I was very upfront. I told you at that time that I did represent him. To hear the city attorney speak, it's a reason that we have an adversarial process in this country. We have an adversarial process. And a lot of the things that were said are not proven in fact. They've not been tested. This is just a statement beyond hearsay. It's almost defamatory with some of the statements that were made here today about what happened. I don't believe, and I will say this on the record, and I hope that the media gets it, that would not be a white business, a white club owner that would have to go through this. These are 2 black-owned businesses, and they're being dragged through the mud because of things that happened based on what she said at 2:46 a.m. in the morning. And what she said about resources and the police being needed, we're asking to be able to pay off-duty police officers to work there. We have begged for off-duty police officers to come in, not all night, but at 2 a.m. to help clear the parking lot. The incident that occurred happened at 2:46 a.m., trying to clear the parking lot. All right? Everything else that council had considered as of July 13th, everything else that she spoke about, council was already aware of. And you said, we're going to give you 18 months to get things together. We didn't even have time to implement everything, and then an incident happened 4 days later. 3 days later, because it was Friday night going into Saturday morning. And so, but during that time, we also engaged like we said, Lake Taylor Civic League. They came to the site the next couple of days. They came, they visited. They didn't have any complaints. They were surprised that the venue was so nice. We got the support of Glen Rock Civic League to this day. We have the support of Poplar Hall Civic League to this day. And so these are the ones that people would be, you would think that they would be saying something about it being an attractive nuisance, and they're not. I also spoke to Mr. Brian Carver today, and he told me to make sure you spell his name right. And DCGS did. They're the gold standard. They did investigate the matter. They did talk to the security guard, and in their words, they cleared him. We've asked for a Freedom of Information Act request from them so we can get the full scope of their investigation. They did take statements from the security there that evening, and at that time, the security had not been indicated, have not lost their license, have not been under investigation, and the words that he used to me was that they were all clear. So that was for the event that happened on July 17th. The security guard who was involved in that, he's actually the victim. He's the one that the man had to go to the court for today. That alleged victim that you saw a video of earlier, this is the person that the security guard, is he here? The security guard had to engage and almost lost his life being dragged by a vehicle. And he had charges pending against him. I think, you know, where we are now is this is a political process. We're not in a court of law. All we have right now is what different folks are saying. The police, if you look at the calls that have been made, they've been made after the club is closed. There's not one allegation that this Origamis have had any issues inside the location since we were here last in July. So what I'm asking is us to continue to move on, as we had already stated, July 13th, to allow them to continue to do things that they did. Since that time, or 4 days after we met, nothing has happened other than the allegation again of something happening in the parking lot on October 31st. The owners can't be held responsible of Origamis. That's a huge parking lot. They can't be held accountable for everything that occurs in that parking lot in the evening. There are several night spots there, and there are several other businesses in that parking lot. After hours, when they close, they do try to clear the parking lot, and they do ask for police assistance. I have personally asked the chief, can we hire off-duty police officers again to get us back to where we need to be, and that's not happened. If you look at some of the items in your package that the city attorney had provided, they tried to get ABC to shut down Origamis. It's in Exhibit 7. And ABC said they hadn't broken any laws, nobody's been convicted of any crime, so they can't do anything. That's where city council should leave it. ABC is good at shutting down business that are a danger and a nuisance to the community. This is not the time to shut them down. DCGS, they reviewed the incident. They have not taken away the security guard. Those security guards are still able to work there, and they still are working there. You heard the city attorney say that based on some of the things that we had to do to get ready, they have paid thousands of dollars in taxes to be able to be here and to continue to operate in business. And what I'm asking now is, I'm asking you to give them a return on their investment in this city. They have done their part. They have invested in this city. They've paid their taxes. And are there some issues that any businesses may have, not getting a proper permit for electrical? There are businesses that make those mistakes. That should not be a reason that you take away folks' livelihood and shut down their business. Hopefully that they will get a return on their business. We have done everything other than that incident that we could not control, and there's going to continue. There are things that may happen at some businesses, but I want to say, I sent over to the city attorney, there's documents from Scotty Quicks. They haven't been closed. They had a shooting in the parking lot. They're not a black-owned business. They're not here. They're not on the agenda. And I have a problem with that. And I think a lot of people here are wondering why there's disparate treatment for different organizations. So I'm hopeful that today you'll allow them to continue to work at their 18 months, continue to work back and report back to council as needed, and not have a knee-jerk reaction every time something happens in the parking lot. They've been there for 5 years, and these folks have been operating for the last several years. There's not been one shooting inside that club. There's a club down the street a few weeks ago where a man was killed after walking right out, shot in the parking lot, Easy In or something like that. They're not on the agenda. So we have to ask ourselves, and I don't think they're black-owned. So I'm asking the council not to do this today, to allow them to continue to operate. Do not revoke their cup. We'll continue to work with the city. We'll continue to ask the chief to help. Inside the club, no problems. Parking lot, clearing the parking lot, that's what the issue is. A lot of the times, people come to the parking lot after it's closed. It's not their fault. They weren't even in there. They just came to the parking lot because they see attractive people, cool people, and they want to be in the parking lot. We need to make sure that we get help clearing the parking lot. If we do that, these things won't happen. You saw the video of the person who was probably not even in the venue that night who was in the parking lot that we tried to clear out. And so give us an opportunity to continue to work with the community, work with the city, and as I said before, all of the incidents that the city attorney outlined before July 13th, I believe should be irrelevant. It should only be under your consideration on what happened since then. And basically, the only thing that happened was that event on a few days later, which was out of their control. 2:40, 2:50. The club had been closed since 2 a.m. And I'd hope that the city would not take their license. One of the managers is here, Kill Booker, who she mentioned, and we're here to answer any questions that the council may have. Thank you.
Mr. Pishko?
Ms. Taylor, do you have any?
And thank you all again. To address some of the points in rebuttal, the all clear from DCJS is regarding the credentials and registration of that security officer. It doesn't mean that that incident was acceptable, and given the fact that that security officer is now being investigated and that Norfolk Police Department is seeking felony indictments, Mr. Brian Carver was not aware of that until I advised him of that today. The delegate states that owners can't be held responsible for everything there, that the responsibility ends at the front door. This situation, particularly the July incident, involves security officers employed by Origami shooting at a vehicle leaving the parking lot. But for that business and those security officers, and the fact that without Norfolk Police assistance, they cannot clear that parking lot in a reasonable time after closing, again, is evidence that it doesn't meet those standards of review. The owner of the business is Wen Wu. I've not heard that she is present tonight, but my understanding from past meetings is that it's an Asian American woman. The delegate brings up that a white owner would not go through this. But again, this is an exceptional action. And the fact that there were promises made to you all on July 13th of 2021 is why we're before you with this sort of action. You've heard that long history with Origami of the meetings, attempts, chances given to them. Under normal circumstances, failure to pay $37,000 plus in taxes would be automatic revocation of a conditional use permit. When they owed those taxes, their conditional use permit had already expired. They were operating without one. They were operating without a business license. And in order to renew that conditional use permit that had expired in 2019, that's when those taxes were paid. There have been issues with restaurants in the city owned by all sorts of people with diverse backgrounds. Scotty Quicks is one that comes to mind. California Burrito. Norfolk First Fridays itself, the city held itself accountable. It was canceled after there were shootings and violence. Granby Theater, Have a Nice Day Cafe, Bar Norfolk, PJ's 19th Hole. Each set of facts in these cases is evaluated individually. Many of those that I listed after meeting with the city, particularly Granby Theater, and realizing that they could not safely operate that business, voluntarily shut themselves down. Origami was on notice of the hesitations of council in granting this current conditional use permit, and they were advised that council would revoke if there were any issues. And that is why we are here again today discussing Origami. Council brings up ABC and suggests that council should follow their lead and DCJS follow their lead. They've approved whatever has gone on there. Well, ABC and DCJS have different responsibilities on a statewide level for different interests. The interest in council here is in granting this conditional use permit under the zoning ordinance. Again, goes back to those standards of review. Would this business operation have a negative cumulative effect on the neighborhood, on the city as a whole? The evidence shows that it does, and we ask that it be revoked. Thank you.
You.
Do I get to respond?
Mr. Fishko?
No, the process, had you just with the middle longer time frame? That's the end of the
I didn't
process.
use up my time for that
Fishko,
purpose.
how much time does he have left? He has 12 minutes left? I'll allow it.
Thank you. What I wanted to say is that security guard that she talks about that fired his gun, he was fighting for his life. He had engaged the car, the driver. The driver pulled out a fire and was brandishing and pointed at other people. He reached in the car and tried to get the young man to put the weapon down. And the young man hit the gas and dragged him. That's what happened when she says that like he just fired the gun. I just think we have to look at the totality of the circumstances. Origamis, they do weddings. They do gender reveals. They do community engagements, conversations. I've been there on Sunday afternoons, on Saturday mornings to talk about things, initiatives, things that we need to do in this community. They attract the people in this community who are the young urban professionals who want to come. They have over 50 employees, Norfolk State University students, Old Dominion University students that work there and get their livelihood from there. All I'm asking is that we continue to allow them to operate, and we'll continue to try to work with this problem. Norfolk and Hampton Roads in general, we have a gun problem. We have a gun problem, generally. And even the city on First Fridays and some other things that are still happening, they have a problem controlling this. You're asking business folks to control everyone that happens. They want to make their establishment safe. They can't be held accountable for what happens at 2:45 in the morning. Yes, the security was out there trying to clear the parking lot, trying to keep the peace. If you look at the call log, they called the police to try to get them to come and help clear the parking lot. That's not because they need it only. They only get that for safety. They need that because the folks won't leave. And then guess what? It's a catch-22. They call the police. She comes and reads the log. They call the police. It's a police incident. Something happens and the police are not there. They hold Origami accountable. It's a catch-22. So I'm just asking you to allow them to continue to operate, share their livelihood, and continue to keep their word to the vendors and the employees that they've based on you guys extending them for additional 18 months.
Delegate Scott,
Yes, one moment.
sorry.
Mrs. McClellan?
I have a question. The one thing that's really bothering me that I can't connect the dots on is that the security guard called the police. The police came. They didn't come?
That's why they were in the parking lot at 246. There were no police
But no,
there.
after the incident, and yet there were no charges that were ever filed. Is that correct?
My understanding, because there were no charges filed that night. No, there were no charges filed that night.
Why is that?
That's a question for you need to talk to the police.
No, there were no charges.
Filed against anyone.
They were
A
the
person was
Origami.
shot that night. No charges were filed.
No, the gentleman, they didn't, the gentleman who's employed by Origami didn't press charges.
Not that night.
Did
'Cause
he pass the press?
He was getting medical care himself. My understanding is he was
Okay.
getting medical care himself. He had a concussion. He had several scars. So I don't even know if the police were able to even get him that night or if they got him at another time.
Okay. I was trying to figure out the,
And I
what I heard was that when they arrived, that the Origami personnel just stonewalled the police and wouldn't say anything.
Yeah, and like I said,
That's
why we
bothersome.
that's why we have courts of law. When people say stuff like that, as an attorney, I kind of take issue with someone just saying that people stonewall or something. That's why we have adversarial systems, so people can come in and get both sides. When you kind of characterize that a detective wrote in his report that people stonewall, then that's an issue. And that's the problem that I have with a lot of these things that are being mischaracterized or characterized just to shed the worst light possible on things, as opposed to trying to get to the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter is at 2:46 a.m., this incident occurred in that parking lot. And the truth of the matter is we had been begging the city to come out there, the police, or off duty, which we would pay. They were paying them well, and they wouldn't come off duty. So that's the issue. And as far as someone being charged, it sounds like, you know, something's going to come from it one way or the other from on both sides of the, based on what the city attorney just said. I'm assuming that's true.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank
Ms. Taylor, will you come back?
Thank you. And just to address Councilwoman McClellan's question.
No, sir. No. And before you, Mr. Scott, do you need more time?
I'm going to want to respond since I reserved my time for that purpose.
Well, if you want to continue with your presentation, I will allow it, sir. Okay, all right.
Yes,
Now,
and on
so
the
this-
limited.
Let me just clear, Mr. Delegate Scott, if a council member has a question for you, certainly, you're perfectly welcome to come back and respond to a question. So the question for you, Ms. Taylor, I believe you reported that there were allegedly shots fired from the car, but when the police officers investigated and recovered the firearm, all of the bullets were accounted for in the magazine and there were no shells in the car.
That's correct.
So where did the shots fired from the car come from?
The suspected shot, per the victim, believed that security may have shot at him, as he had just reported that there had been multiple security guards on his vehicle, and that he did acknowledge that one, I believe, the one that was present here tonight, had his hand on his steering wheel when he drove off, that he may have dragged him. And the initial call from Origami was that the vehicle had shot at security. And I'm reading from the Norfolk Police Department case summary, when PD arrived, multiple security guards stated no one called police, but pointed out another security guard off to the side. The security guard claimed he tried to disarm a patron who allegedly brandished a firearm, and he went into the vehicle when the subject drove off and was dragged. He did not want a report done and was uncooperative with patrol.
Second question to you, do we have a review and a determination by our police department or by our prosecutor to determine whether or not the shot that was fired is justified or is a good shoot? Do we have anything from our police department or prosecutor, any type of analysis?
I do not.
You do not. Can you tell me why we don't have a police report or an analysis of gunshots being fired in the city of Norfolk by our police department or prosecutor?
I'm not sure what aspect of the analysis, but there is a charge being sought against who they suspect fired that shot. To put that in perspective, taking out a charge shows the evaluation that a charge would be appropriate in that situation for someone that shoots at an occupied vehicle.
Any questions from the council for Delegate Scott or Ms. Taylor? Ms. Pishko, do you have anything to add, sir?
I do not. I think it's, if you're ready for the vote, I think that if the council has no other further questions, I think that's the next step.
Mr. Bull.
Sir, I have an ordinance revoking a conditional use permit previously granted to Origami Asian Bistro on July 13th, 2021 by ordinance number 48430, authorizing the operation of a nightclub on property located at 5957 East Virginia Beach Boulevard, Suite 18. Dispense with the charter requirement for reading the ordinance twice and adopt with the effective date. Mrs. Doyle.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mrs. McClellan.
Aye.
Mr. Riddick.
No.
Ms. Royster.
Aye.
Mr. Smeagol.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Abstain.
Dr. Alexander.
Aye.
Thank you.